What does it mean for your spirituality to know that a goddess like Asherah,
as Israelite prophets and priests developed their view of Yahweh as being beyond just a god among gods, the God of Israel, a little provincial god, into a much grander conception that Yahweh is in fact the sole God of the universe, God necessarily became ever more cosmic and remote. And so other gods that might have existed in their original cosmology, in their original worship, their original mythology, were then demoted. And so the sons of God are no longer gods, but become something less than that. And there are also potentially then instances where Yahweh perhaps seemed to interact directly, for example, with Abraham or with Jacob or with others. Those are also maybe demoted to an angel interacting with them, resulting in essentially this lesser divine being of angels, Malachim.
Reflected in these biblical texts is a deity who was very much part and parcel of a polytheistic system. He was not the only, he wasn't this solitary deity. We have one particular text in the book of Deuteronomy. It's a very old piece of almost like fossilized poetry that sort of speaks of a mythology whereby Yahweh, who becomes known as the God of Israel, the God of the Bible, was originally a son. He had a dad. His dad was El, the high god, who was, the high god in the Levantine part of the world. And originally, Yahweh was simply kind of one of that younger generation of deities, a son of a high god and high goddess. This particular deity eventually slowly starts to kind of take over a lot of the roles and functions of this high god. He basically, you could say, in theory, he kind of overthrows his own father, as is very typical.
On the first commandment by an expert in Moses' teachings, he said the Lord our God is the only Lord, not God. When Jesus mentioned the commandments necessary to attain eternal life on his own, when he wasn't in a situation engineered to trap him, he refrained from mentioning the first one, only saying never commit adultery, murder, steal, or give false testimony, and to honor your father and mother. When Jesus was crucified, he quoted Psalm 22, where the narrator calls out to El, while a crowd mocks him, saying, "Ask Yahweh to save you." Yahweh is Satan. The psalm Jesus quoted on the cross says Yahweh rules the nations. Remember how Satan demonstrated his authority over the nations by offering them to Christ in exchange for being worshipped by him? Similarly, Yahweh gave King Cyrus power over the nations in exchange for being worshipped, the same offer he gave Christ. Compare these two verses. When Jesus was questioned on the